Ah,
Uh, there are some things that just because you can do them, it doesn't mean that you should. And I think that those Zoom filters are perhaps one of those things that just because you can does not mean that it's a good idea. So, enough of this. Hey, everybody, you are in the Nature Journal Workshop with your hosts, John Muir Laws and Vea Moore. Today we have a special guest, Sandy McDermott, who is going to be, we're going to have a wonderful time. So, Sandy, I am delighted to have you on with us. I've been following your work for quite a while now, and it is really, really exciting. You are a naturalist, explorer, adventurer, journaler. You get mad points for being just sort of taking your life by the little short ears, and making the most of it. Recently, I saw this post you're doing when you were out in the field playing with grizzly bears, and in the most respectful way.
yes.
And I knew I had to get you on to talk about your experience and to show us some of the approaches that you're doing, because these gestures that you're getting of these animals, it feels so they feel really alive, and I get the sense of you're being such a sponge in that moment. And I would love to give you a chance to talk about your process and the things that you're doing, and also give people a chance to follow you. Thank you so much for being here. Maybe you could just sort of tell us a little bit about, just shortly, kind of your arc of life. What kind of brings you to here to this point? What have
first, I just want to say thank you for having me here. This is really a highlight of my career to this point. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you and to share some of my work with your audience. This is really a special moment for me. So to that question, it's been quite a meandering path for me. I grew up in the city. I'll make this brief. I grew up in the city of Cambridge and Boston, and but always loved drawing, always loved animals. Did not realize that wildlife was actually right there in my neighborhood, and it took me a long time to understand that. I was out of high school before I took my first drawing class, and that is what led me on this long meandering path to where I am now in Alaska. Alaska is not a place I ever imagined I would live, nor was it for my husband, but an opportunity for him came up that we didn't want to pass up. And so here we are. I was terrified to come here and live here. I was especially terrified, and to some degree, it's a manageable anxiety at this point, but bears and moose, it's a common, they're both very common here. I live in Anchorage. I'm not in the outskirts of the wilderness here. I'm right in the city, and we do get bears and moose in the city. Everywhere you go, they're here. And so that really, really changed how I had to approach my day-to-day life. I love moose. I love bears. I think they're incredible creatures, but they're very large. They're plentiful, and you do not want to startle them. Moose actually kill more people than bears do here. So you have to be really respectful of that. So one of the things I embraced on coming here was I got to find a way to get over these anxieties, because I'm an outdoor person. And of course, the work that I do means I'm outside as often as possible, but this was a totally new environment for me. I needed to find a way to get comfortable with being places. And so I turned to my sketchbook to do that. That just seemed like the intuitive comfort place for me to go out and start to get to know the plants and animals here in a way that provided comfort for me. I'm still not very comfortable going out on my own. I'm still seeking partners that would join me and take me places that they know of. So if there's anyone on here from Alaska that lives in the Anchorage area, please connect with me, because I would love to have a partner in crime to be more comfortable. But that's not to say I'm not out there. I have already filled up one sketchbook here. I'm on my second sketchbook, and it's endless. The opportunities here are really endless. And so that has allowed me to find that comfort place and embrace where I am instead of feeling isolated and wanting to run home, which is in New England.
Where there are also moose, but maybe not as many moose.
Right. You're right. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I did live in a state and in a part of the state where bear and moose are around. They're just not as common. We don't have brown bears back in New Hampshire, and you don't encounter them quite as regularly as you do here.
Yeah, I remember I was doing a solo trek across the Kenai Peninsula, and when, going through this big willow thicket, and just like, this is such a great place to make a really, really classic blender. So I was doing my best Broadway shows as I was walking along the trail. I'm normally like the naturalist, sort of sneaking along, but the rules are different. And moose, they're huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. And when you see a moose in the city, I remember last winter driving
out. Stop sign, big moose.
Yeah, driving out of our driveway. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. It's the winter. It's still pitch dark. So driving out of the driveway, turning the corner, and my headlights, as I turned the corner, was shining on a moose that was right across the street on the sidewalk. And to see them out in the wilderness is one thing. You do get a sense for how big they are. But seeing them on a city sidewalk up against somebody's house, it totally changes the perception of how big they are.
Yeah. When I worked in Grand Teton National Park for a little while, and my first full day there, I went down by a little creek and sat down beside the creek to sketch some porcupine scat.
Ooh.
And as I was sitting there, a mother moose and calf walked right past me, and I was sitting down on the ground. I was looking up at this. They didn't notice me, and I'm really, really lucky that they didn't, because, Mama Moose does not like to be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of hoof.
Yeah,
it's a whole lot.
Yeah.
So we hope that you stay safe. But I love the way that you've got this journal blasting away.
Yeah.
You recently went on an expedition, and you kind of dealt with part of bear anxiety by just diving deep into bears.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe let's just start with, well, we've already started, but let's play with that a little bit. I think you've got some stuff that you prepared to help us kind of think a little bit about bears. And if you know black bears, it's different than the brown bears, and Sandy's going to straighten us out on that. So this is a great time to grab your journal, start making notes, and we're gonna sketch along with you. And I'd love to see just your thoughts about the bears, your approach to drawing them, and anything else you'd love to share.
Okay. I'm setting up my share right now, so give me one moment. I'm going to start with talking about the difference between black bears and brown bears. So I'll share that first. And this will be kind of brief, because I hope everyone can see this graphic, this infographic that I have up on the screen right now.
Yes.
Awesome. So definitely what we had to, I had to learn the differences between black bears and brown bears. They do behave differently, although there are some similarities in how they behave. And both are plentiful, although where I live right now in the city, this end of Anchorage, we see far more black bears than we do brown bears. North of here, north of the city, even at the city's edge, the northeastern part of the city and then beyond is where, in this very local area, where brown bear encounters might happen more. And there's plenty of hiking all over the place. So you got to be careful. They move fast and they travel vast areas. So you can encounter either one of these up in the mountains. So some of the differences are very obvious right off the bat. Black bears tend to have a straighter profile from snout up to the crown of their head. They also have bigger ears, more prominent. They stand up above the skull, the crown of the head, a little bit longer. Their claws, although both species have very dangerous claws, the black bears are darker and shorter. And probably the most, obvious difference on glance is that the black bear does not have a shoulder hump. Look at the difference with the grizzly or brown bear. Huge hump on their backs. And follow that ridge down to the crown of their head and to their snout, a very different shape to that profile. They have what most people will call a dish face. When you see some pictures up, I have a few, that face on, you'll see it's a much rounder disc-like shape to their face. Their ears are smaller and rounder. They tend not to project above the scalp. Mm. Look at those claws on that brown bear. They're much longer and they are lighter in color. And hopefully you're not close enough to be able to see the color of the claws, but there is a difference. And they're, if you're finding evidence of bear in the area that you're hiking or just being, their footprints are different as well. And I do have a great picture of brown bear tracks that we passed on our trip that we took.
And there's a difference in the structure of their scat as well, right? The brown bears, I understand, those are the scats that you find that have little bells in them and smell like pepper.
That's right. Yes. I've never seen, I don't believe I've ever seen brown bear scat, but I have seen plenty of black bear scat, and more so back home, actually. I haven't seen a whole lot of it here. And I do keep my eyes open when I'm on trail because I'm, that anxiety level is up and it makes me far more in tune to my surroundings. So I can't speak to what a brown bear scat looks like. Did you ever see any in your travels up here?
I have. Kidding aside, it's a massive diameter where you kind of look at the width of this thing and you're thinking like that's huge. That's impressive. Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So, Deb is wondering about kind of if we can kind of explain a little bit more by dished profile. What do we mean?
Oh, so I can show you that when I get to some other photographs of mine. But basically, their face is rounder and almost dish-like in that there's a slight convex shape to it with the snout coming out from that. Mm-hmm. And with the black bear, it's pretty straightforward. There's really no roundness to it. That being said, there are plenty of cases where a black bear might look like a brown bear. Very large black bears, mm-hmm. Maybe they're overweight, but they could have a much rounder looking face. And the same with the brown bears, less likely to look like a black bear, but younger, thinner ones could potentially take on a black bear appearance. Mm-hmm. So these differences, the ears, the profile of the head, and that dish-like, and the hump, are the things that from a distance, on a glance, might be good field ID marks to help you see quickly or decide quickly if you're seeing a black bear or a brown bear. But that's not to say that's always going to be easy to do. Yeah. And I want to show you a couple of pictures I have So these are two black bears. The other thing about the difference between the two, black bears aren't always black and brown bears are not always brown. So that can be very confusing in the field. Here are a couple of black bears, but it shows very nicely two different colors and those ears, that nice long projecting ears. And same case with this one, which is a young one. But this comes
looks like
from
a rabbit cross.
Yeah, I know. Really big snout in this picture anyway. He doesn't have a dish-shaped face. I mean, it's obvious that that face is kind of round, but when I show you the brown bear face, you'll see the difference. And just those huge ears, which again, in the field, depending on the situation, the perspective you're seeing, the angle that you're seeing, those ears might not look that big. So take all of this to heart. These are very good field ID things to know, but it's not always going to be that way. All right. I'm going to stop sharing these, and I want to share my sketchbook, those few pages that came from that one day of checking out live brown bears.
And that's when I saw those pictures, I said, I gotta get Sandy on with us. Just these gestures captured the feeling of these massive animals so well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble moving my screen over. I'm going to do this. There we go. So I can center this and make it a little bigger. Okay, I guess that's as big as I can make it. All right, so this page here was the first page. So this trip was done through the Sasquatch Alaska Adventure Company out of Homer, Alaska. Super, super wonderful organization. Their pilots were the wildlife guides or the bear guides. They were very well equipped to handle pretty much any situation that we might find ourselves in. And they were great at leading the tour. So pretty much right off the bat, my anxiety lowered, my comfort level went up, and it made for a really spectacular day. We had the best weather. It was one of the hottest days of the year. And this was we flew over to, from Homer over to Katmai National Park. And both of these areas are in what we call the temperate rainforest region. Southeast Alaska up through just south of Anchorage actually is considered temperate rainforest area. And we lucked out with a gorgeous, sunny, warm day. Just enough breeze to keep the horrible mosquitoes and gnats off of us. So that was great. And it made for the ability to really focus on what we were looking at.
Something that you're doing here that I think is really smart is, so you kind of you're hitting the ground running, and very often the first sketches of the day, they're scary to make because your brain hasn't really connected with the shape or with your hand yet. And exactly. So tell us a little bit about your sort of your initial, I'm just going to go for it approach here.
In this particular case, but I think in probably any case that I have, those first sketches are always, you're right, they're the scary ones. They're the ones that you just got to go. It's like somebody's described it once, maybe this was you, John, that first pancake in the pan. It's kind of, right?
The sacrificial pancakes, yeah.
Yeah, it's the throwaway pancake. You just got to, pour that batter in, let it do what it's going to do, and then somebody will eat it, but it's not going to be totally ruined. And that really is a great analogy. So this first page are my initial sketches trying to warm up. Before that day, I had never drawn wild bears before of any kind. So I gave myself some grace for that and just put the pen to paper. I chose pen. First of all, I love drawing in pen, but secondly, there wasn't a lot of time. I did not want to have to fuss around with graphite and erasers. And I knew if I had a graphite pencil in my hand, I would want to erase marks and redo them. So the pen is great for that. You just got to let go of whatever happens on the page and focus on what you're seeing. And in this particular page, there were two young bears that we were looking at, and they were moving around. So, like any animal, if it's moving around, you have to have a way to draw really fast. So most of my attention and my effort was watching what those bears were doing, and then letting my hand work on the paper. My eyes and my hand are always connected, but I'm not always looking at the page to see what's happening. I'll glance down and take a look, but I'm at a point, I have been for a while, where it's okay. Whatever happens on the page, it's okay. I know that this is just the warm-up phase.
So again, you're for a bunch of these initial sketches, you're staring at the bear and less at your paper, and just sort of doing that blind contour approach, or a partial blind contour approach.
Yeah,
That's
discovered.
Great idea.
It is. It's so useful, and I discovered many years ago when I decided that I really wanted to try drawing birds. At first it was like everybody else, they're moving. It's too hard, but the urge to want to try was so strong that I felt like I just have to do it. And what I realized after practicing and trying for a while is, I have, because I was trained, I have to keep my eyes on the object, because I don't want to draw stuff I don't know. That's not going to look right. So I would keep my eyes on the object, keep my hand moving on the page, just like it was a blind contour. But it's also very gestural in its approach, because I'm not necessarily keeping the pen on the page the entire time. I'm lifting it and putting it back. But so it's a combination of both a blind contour and a gestural sketch. And I think the combination, it does require practice. It does require a warm-up page like this, but it can result in some of the most charming, gestural, lifelike, organic sketches, as opposed to trying to be very careful and mindful about the process.
The careful sketches right at the start often really pull me in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So I want to point out two other strategies that you're using. So these bears are wandering around, I'm guessing, in some taller grass, and there are times that you cannot see their legs. Yeah. And so you're focusing on what is the contour of what I can see.
Exactly.
But for what's interesting about that is that for a lot of us, we'd say like, well, I'm going to wait till I get a good look at the bear.
Yeah.
Right? And the bear then spends the rest of the day in the tall grass. You end up a day with nothing on your paper. But just like whatever the bear is going to give me, okay, I can't see your legs at this point, so I'm just going to work on that contour of what I'm seeing up there. And another interesting strategy, that as you're just doing these little warm-ups, you just wrote across the page, warming up. And I think that might be a kind of a good idea to sort of let our brains realize that, to kind of give yourself permission to have a bunch of those warm-up drawings on there. Then if you say you're warming up and you're worried about somebody criticizing your sketches, then write warm-up on it, and then everybody will be a lot more forgiving, and you might be more forgiving of yourself. And if you find that helps, then write warm-up on every drawing. I do share that with my students as well. I very much encourage write what the process was, right where the gestural sketch. Write the process.
Write the process, because it's all part of that learning. And if you don't make these notes, some of them you're going to remember, but a lot of it you're not going to remember. And you're to your point on reflection, looking back at it for your own self. It's a great learning process, I think.
Oh, this is fun.
As an instructor, I freely share my sketchbooks, and because there is so much learning going on in my own sketchbooks. And again, before this day, I had never drawn bears before, not in wild. So I was unfamiliar with the shape, and I needed some time to get to warm up to that shape. What am I looking at? And at first, my first glances that I was looking at was like, wow, he kind of looks like a cow. But He's not a cow, he's a bear. And as I worked my way through this process, so this is why I have arrows here. This was the first attempt, another attempt, and then this one. And I'm not sure any one of those looks closer to being a bear than a cow, but that's okay. This is helping me to remember what I was doing. I kind of feel like these sketches in here sort of feel like bear, even though I'm only showing the ridge of their back and that hump, and maybe I'm going to zoom in a little bit if I can.
Yeah. That feels really berry to me too.
And then finally, the last one I did on this page was this one. And I felt like, okay, after all of this practicing and looking, I captured something that's really sketchy in terms of, it's rough. It's not a refined thing, but I feel like I got just the right lines I emphasized just the right lines to feel bare, and then added in this little bit of shadow, which gives just a little bit of context. And I love
that? Yeah. And yeah, that just a little bit of shadow in there, then all of a sudden you've got the contour, and all of a sudden there's the volume too.
Yeah.
There's two other ones in here that I also think have a remarkable berryness to them. The one right above where it says foraging for grubs, and that one there, kind of sort of the front on.
Yeah.
That feels like a lump of bear. And then also that on the left-hand side, second one down, I kind of have this bear leaning, sort of starting to turn here.
That's exactly what was happening.
And you've got that negative space under the neck and leg. And boom.
Yeah.
That feels, like with gesture sketches, a bunch of them won't work, but there'll be these parts of them where you're like, your brain is starting to wrap around this idea of bareness.
Yeah.
And, just with those few lines, you've got the bare necessities.
The bare necessities. That's right. I want to also say the added challenge to this particular event, this day, was that I was not alone. I was with a group of, we probably had 22 people in total. That's not, well, maybe a little less than that. It was 3 planes with 6 passengers total. So a total of 18 people. 3 of those were guides. We did separate into 2 different groups. And we had no way of knowing, even the guides, no way of knowing if we were actually going to see bears. They know where they tend to be. They know where to look, these guides, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, because I'm with other people, I'm the only one carrying my sketchbook around. And I know I had some questioning looks, like, why are you carrying a sketchbook around? I even asked one of my guides, because I didn't know what to expect. I asked my guide, is it okay if I carry this? I didn't want to step out of any safety boundaries. Which sounds kind of ridiculous now, but anyway, I was very mindful of the fact that I am alone in my attempt at doing this, and I may not have really a great opportunity to do it, but I'm going to be ready. If something comes up, I'm going to be ready. And I was grateful for that.
Yeah. Let's take a look at what happened next.
So next page.
Shape and volume popping out here, right?
Yes. Yeah. So quickly getting familiar with that voluminous shape of bear. This was so the first page were 2 young, I think they were 4 or 5-year-old sibling blondies, which means they're very light colored brown bear. And here we hiked a couple of miles in another direction to a location that had one very large, this is a 900-pound alpha male. And you could see from a distance, he was a large bear. So the way that we approach this is also, all right, the way that we approach this with our guide is, this is a couple of the things that they required us to do. We could not walk alone. We had to walk as a group, a mass, rather than individual people or beings. That's one thing that makes a bear a little more comfortable with what's happening around them. Absolutely silent and slow. And as we started this process to get closer to this particular bear's name was Lippy, the guides named him that. As we started to approach the bear, my anxiety level started going through the roof. I was really quite terrified because I know bears can move fast. And even though we have guides who had guns, and there were a lot of people around me, my anxiety level was still up. So my husband grabbed my hand, kind of kept me close to him. And we got to a point close enough, the group, where we stopped and we could just watch. And we were in this location with engaging from a distance with this bear. It might have only been about 50 yards. He was really comfortable and relaxed. And when we got to him, he was up on the grassy tundra area, and he moved his way down into a creek, presumably to cool off because it was an extraordinarily warm day, and to take a nap. And that provided the most perfect opportunity to have time with this animal not moving too much in order to get some sketches down. But what I was pleased with on this particular page, I mean, he was mostly still, but not completely still. It allowed me to focus a little bit more. And because I was already got that warm-up page out of the way, the sketches became a little larger. They're no longer just these little lines, of the ridge of the back or a shape of the ear. I'm actually starting to capture a little bit more of the details that make it look like bear. And that was quite pleasing for me. And in this case, we might have been sitting in front of it for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. I honestly can't remember how long it was. But in my mind, it became just me and the bear, not the people around me. It was just me and the bear.
That's right.
And it felt like it could have been an hour.
Yeah, you dropped into a flow state.
Yes. Yeah.
Time just melts away.
It does.
And the photographers around you are frustrated that the bear isn't doing different things, right?
And
yes. You are in that. Were they complaining about that?
No, they were not complaining about it, but I understand what you're saying, that, all of the guides, they each had their own cameras, plus, every person there had their own camera, mostly phone cameras, but the guides had the big, full on DSLRs with the big lenses. And and being somewhat of a photographer myself, I can understand how, okay, he's just, he's not moving around. Like 20 minutes of pretty much the same position can be boring for a photographer. But I was sketching away, having the best time. And when I get to the next page, I'll tell you what one of the guides, he came up behind me. I had no idea. And he had a comment that made me feel really great, that it stood out. So
I want to point something out that you're doing that is a really useful kind of portable strategy here. So take a look kind of at the eyes of the bears. Take a look at the bear's eyes. And you'll notice that Sandy knows there are little eyes there. And what people will tend to do is, because they know there are eyes, they will draw in the eyes. But Sandy's looking at these things, and from this distance, she's seeing these areas of light and dark. Think how tempting it would be to kind of draw the nostrils in, because you know there are nostrils in there. Draw the eyes in, because you know there are eyes in there. And that you get something that's different. The most successful sketches here, what is she doing? She's drawing areas of light and dark. There's a dark zone, and she's putting that in. There's a light zone, and she's putting that in. And then those things together sculpt and carve the heads and the features of these critters. Sometimes, and there's a little eye in there, but it's kind of hidden in the rest of the stuff. If we kind of draw what we know, then we tend to, we'll draw the ear. But what Sandy's doing is she's kind of looking at this thing, and she's recording the value changes that she's observing. She's recording the dark inside the ear, the dark around the edges of that muzzle, and the light plane that muzzle makes, the dark splotch that is made by the nose that then drops off on the sort of a sheer plane at the end of that snout. And that's what gives these little sketches here all this volume. So really, I love how you're looking at values and the shapes of those values that carves these forms. And I also just love the little paw pointing towards you on the top right one.
Yeah, right there.
The little paw, just pause for a moment and appreciate that. Minimal effort, maximal paw.
That was a moment where we were close enough to actually see those white claws and how large or how long they are. So I had, excuse me, I really wanted to emphasize that somewhere in the sketches that I put together.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, just so later on we'll have some photographs of some bears, and want to encourage people to, what if you got away from drawing the eye and the mouth and the nose and the nostril and the ear, and instead let yourself just look at lights and darks and the shapes of those light and dark areas. Cool.
I'm glad you point that out, because it really is. Sometimes some of these things are intuitive to me. They're like, it's an unconscious approach, but that really is what I'm working with. Is I might be a lot closer to the bear at this point, and I can see some of these things like John is pointing out, but we had a strong sunlight that day, so it really had the opportunity of, or presented the opportunity of, seeing lights and darks and how light shapes everything. And sometimes that's the best approach, is to not look at the details and just look at how the light is shaping that object and work with that. And it helps to take the brain away from, bear and all that bareness to just, that's a big lump out there. Let me see if I can draw just abstractly by looking at the lights and darks.
Yeah, you're giving up what you know about bear to actually draw the patterns of lights and darks that are before you. That's hard to do.
It can be. Yeah, it can be. Shall I go to the last page?
Yeah. This is really cool.
So once again, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see more of it. The sketches are now much bigger than the first page. And all that time I'm spending just watching and putting marks on my page without a whole lot of attention to the page. Well, at this point, I am putting a little more attention to what's happening on the page. I feel a little more confident in my my ability to understand what I'm seeing. And I can work a little bit slower, but it doesn't look quite like I'm working a little slower. I'm still using that really organic gestural sketch type approach. And after maybe a 10-minute nap in the water, he got back up again, came out of the creek, which was our signal to start backing away. And so we had to move. And these two bottom sketches, I was further back, but I had stopped and turned around because a couple of the guides had also stopped to take a whole bunch of pictures. And as long as we were all really quiet, we could stay. We still had to back up, but we could stop and turn around and take a moment to watch. And that's where I tried to capture a few more full body shapes in there. And, I'm not, this one here is like, okay, I got a little bit, this is my own opinion, I got a little bit more berryness feel right there, but I feel like this one is what truly captured aspects of brown bear in it in a quick way. So yeah, that progression, I was able to go from tiny little chicken scratch marks that are really trying to focus on capturing the essence of what I'm seeing, that warm-up phase. But as you gain confidence, those sketches using the same approach can become a little more informed, a little more complete, and they show a little more confidence by being larger.
Now, he's also mentioning that bear that's right there in the middle of the drawing, and that one also really caught my eye. Something I wanted to point out on it is, again, this is just in the idea of, I'm going to sketch what I see rather than what I know. Look at how Sandy has handled those ears. How tempting would it be to draw a line around the outside edge of the ear? But what is Sandy doing? She's drawing the shadow inside that ear.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's seeing. Her brain and then our brains look at this, and your brain puts that little line around it. And I've got these backlit ears.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be so tempting to carve that in with a little line, because that's what our brain knows. This.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I particularly love the simplicity of line with this one here on the left, just curled up, and again, we'll get to some photographs, but this one here is showing that sort of disc-like or plate-like, dish-like shape of the brown bear. And this one does as well. And that big, bushy, dish-like face has a lot of shadow in it. And I really was focused with this one on, of course, I wanted to get some of the outside edge of the bear shape, but I really did focus on just the shadowed areas to try to carve out more of bareness into the form. And at first, when I first finished this and looked at these two, I was like, kind of maybe too much like a raccoon, but really not. I think it helps that the snout has some dark area to it. I've carved out just the right space for that snout, and just a few lines suggesting that dish-like shape to the head again.
And something that is neat about that, so it's those lines are loose, but they're carefully describing the shapes of those dark spaces, and that's what carves the planes of that nose. You really feel that there's this dishy face around a nose that sticks out, and then the edge of the nose just drops off because of those, that carefully paying attention to those. What is the shape of that shadow, or the shape of that dark spot?
Right. Yeah.
And also love the way that the words I'm reading what you're writing here. So you're learning things about this, there's some information from the guides, and you're putting that in as a narrative that is wrapping down and around all of these shapes. And notice how that content is really different than the shape of the bear. And that by doing the writing and the drawing together, you're able to record so much more of what you were learning and get your brain to focus on that.
Yeah. My approach to field sketching and nature journaling from long ago has been draw what I see. It's always about the drawing for me. I'm a very visual person. I'm much more of the artist brain than I am of the science brain, although I trained a little bit in the sciences. So much of what I know about the natural world comes directly from my sketchbook, from firsthand observations, making sketches about them. That's always the first thing for me. But when it comes to the writing, I really enjoy the process of putting on the paper what I have learned about that object. And that whole combination of the drawing and the writing is what keeps stuff in my brain. It helps me to remember. I find different ways of putting that writing on the page. And on this particular one, it just felt right to write more about what I learned on this page than the others, and let it float all around, let the words just kind of float all around the sketches themselves.
And then on the left, you're thinking about your experience, and there's sort of personal reflection in there about your process.
Yeah. I'm still a student like most everybody else. And I like to keep putting things in my journal that help me to remember about a particular day or why I chose a particular method. But also as an instructor, again, I do enjoy sharing my sketchbooks. And so I like to have, it isn't how I always operate, but I do like to add stuff in there. It's so that if somebody's looking through my pages, they understand that they're getting a glimpse of not only what I'm seeing and what I'm learning, but a glimpse of the process, why I chose a particular method, that this isn't just random doodling on a page. This is very, very purposeful. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Would you like to show some pictures that you took in that place, and we can try everybody sketching from some of those?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love to guide you through some of the process.
Love to see.
I'm going to stop sharing that. This moves over. So what I'm going to show you next are some of my own photographs from 2 different trips, I think. One of them was in Denali, and it wasn't a trip to see bears. It was a trip. It was actually a birding weekend in Denali, which was fabulous. But in that weekend in Denali, we did see one very large blonde brown bear. And that particular day was my first time ever seeing a brown bear in the wild. Oh, here we go. I lost my Zoom screen. Okay. Share that. Okay, so I hope you see both my sketchbook and a photograph. Nope, I just have to tweak things a little bit to see my tools. Okay, I'm gonna make that bigger. All right.
Maybe it's possible to zoom down on that bear a little bit more. By the way, that beautiful, beautiful background there.
Yeah, that was definitely an iconic. This was at Katmai National Park. This is very much an iconic Alaska image with those huge mountains and glaciers, and then having this tundra and a brown bear right there. It's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to switch sketchbooks because this is my older one. This is page 4, I think, of my new sketchbook. All right. So sometimes seeing these bears or any organism, any animal from a distance is the best way to start because you're not always, you're not caught up with all of the details of what our brain thinks we know about that object, in this case, brown bears. So what I would like you to try to do, and I'm going to do this on the page, you can either watch or you can draw along with me. I'm going to caveat this by saying this being in my studio and doing this from photographs is an entirely different experience from being out in the wild with them. So
you're not being eaten by mosquitoes either.
Right, not being bothered by mosquitoes. So the feeling at this moment in my brain is a little different, but we can still approach it the same way. And I'm using the same pen that I used on that particular day. And so what I'm going to do, if you're familiar with the blind contour and gesture sketches, we're going to try to combine the 2 of them and just see what we can capture about the essence. And I have several photographs we can practice. I'm going to just flip through these fairly quickly. I'm not paying attention to time. I'm kind of relying on Ivea and John to keep me on task for that. But let's see if we can get through how many of these we can get through. So here I am. I'm trying to watch this bear, try to capture that. Look at that. My eyes are going over that big hump. And then this long back that's kind of slopes. And there's a little bit of cowness to the way their body is structured. I'm actually drawing a little bigger than I would probably in the field. And that's because I see the picture. I see the bear from the photograph closer than I would in the field. And again, these are warm-ups. I did not spend any time warming up. before class, before the workshop. It helps to understand a little bit about bear anatomy. And one of the things that has guided me with my animal drawings of any kind is trying to figure out where the backbone is. Where is that spine? Because everything for mammals and a lot of animals, everything hangs from that backbone. And so where that large shoulder hump is, you can assume that the legs, the forelegs, are hanging off of that. And this being a bit of a blind contour, things are not always going to match up. And I'm going to go back in here where that shadow is. I want to put that ear in right there. And I'm also going to draw a little bit of a line to try to define some of that light and shadow. So that's my very first warm up of this particular bear, trying to do a bit of a blind contour, bit of a gesture sketch, keeping the pen moving, keeping my eyes on the object, but my eyes and my hand are always connected. And these initial sketches they're going to look, they're not going to look exactly like the animal. They're just intended for you to keep looking, keep learning, and understanding the shape. I'm going to flip to another photograph. This is the same bear, different pose.
Oh, that's a cool pose.
Yeah. So let's get in there and see if we can do this again. I'm going to try to do this one a little bit smaller. So work along with me. My eyes are going over that large hump right there.
That dynamic leg out to the side there.
Isn't that cool?
That's really a cool bear pose.
So follow that leg. And it's okay if your lines are not quite where they are from the object you're looking at. Again, I can't emphasize enough just the importance of, I'm going to move that little cursor. So in that shadow, I don't see much at all. This becomes one large mask kind of to my eyes. And I don't really see much of the right side of the head, so I'm not going to try to draw that in, but I do see a little bit of the ear popping up over here. The difference with blind contours, I'm making up a line right here just to get back to where I want to be. And this big blob right here is all head and front left leg. I'm just kind of filling it in to show some light, and you can do this too.
That's what I think is really cool, right? So think how tempting it would be to draw in, here's the edge of the muzzle and here's the eyes, and you're not seeing any of that. You've just got that mass there that is head and leg.
Yep.
And I can't see the difference between it. So you're not putting that in. That's a huge lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to mark making, I find that, you can learn all different kinds of mark makings to fit the situation. This being a bear, he's got hair, and we kind of know that the bear's hair goes in a particular direction. It grows, and we try to follow that to create contour. But I think coming up with different kind of marks that might look a little bit scribbly like this can also serve a purpose. It's a little more abstract, but I think that there's so much fun and so much charm that this allows to show. And I can get lost in my.
But you're keeping the shape of those highlights.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of those arcs of coming over the shoulder, over the side of the belly, over the edge of the legs. Notice how Sandy's keeping those arcs light there. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So that's the abstractness of it, I think, provides a lot of fun and a lot of freedom, and it can come up with a really charming sketch. So it's all circumstantial. It's all what's your goal in the end. And right now we're just trying to get to put some bear shape and bear form on paper in a very quick gestural blind contour type of way. So that's exactly what I would do, what I did do with some of the sketches I did that day. So I'm going to flip to this one. This is one of the young blondies. Like, it's a very light colored brown bear. There we go. It's getting a little pixelated, but that's okay. See how, I mean, you can really see the direction of fur. You can see all that fur in here. Now we have an added layer of complexity to deal with, but it doesn't mean you should let yourself get really caught up in that. So let's do this one really quick.
Sure.
Same method. More of a modified contour. I keep saying blind, but it's more of a modified. And because it is modified, I can see what's happening on the page. But because I can see what's happening on the page, you know, it's the brain might become, and the ego might become a little more self-conscious about what's happening on the page.
Oh, isn't that true?
Yes.
So how do you fight against that? How do you kind of, when those voices are coming up, how do you kind of get them to simmer down so you can come back to bear?
I think it's just a matter of reaching a point where I know that this is not necessarily the end product for me, and that this is just a start. And whatever happens on the page, there's going to be something in it that I can take to a different sketch and apply. So it might just be this hump right here that I'm drawing right now. Maybe that's the only part of this that becomes bear-like, and I'm okay with that, because I know that this is all, I'm not connecting things. This is all about practice. I'm going to go back. This is what we do. Go back to where you feel like the lines didn't do the right thing or go the right way. You're going to raise that hump a little bit higher and try to, there we go, connect the head a little bit better. Yeah, so it's just, for me, become you know, what I tell students is everybody needs a starting point. No matter where you are with your background in drawing or your interest level, your skill level, everybody needs to allow themselves that starting point. And giving myself that freedom to think that way is really what allows me to not get too caught up with all that detail or letting my ego take over. I think we've all had experiences as young people that where someone else criticized or judged a sketch or drawing or painting or some piece of art, and it can really sit with you for a long time. And that you just have to let yourself accept whatever starting point you're at and move forward. The ego thing, it only keeps you back.
And I love that idea that think of this. So don't think of this sketch as a finished thing. Think of this as even when we finish a page,
right?
That's a starting point, and that's a starting point, and that's a starting point. Whatever I do, it's the starting point for whatever comes next, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm never disappointed. I might be unhappy with some things. I might expect more of myself on a given day than I can actually put out, but there's always something, that one stroke, that, you know, that edge of the hump or the ear mark, just these things that we've been pointing out. There's always going to be something on a page that makes me go, I hit it. I got that one place, that one spot just right. And I'm okay with that. I guess it's a lot like yoga, where you could study yoga for a long time and not get it right every single time you do it. But the whole idea is just to practice and accept that what you produce or can do on a given day is what you can produce on a given day. Let me see. I want to see if I have, oh, okay, here we go. This photograph is showing that dish-like face. Look at all that skin and fur around the snout, and the little shadows here on either side of the snout where the eyes are. Honestly, I have no idea how big or small brown bear eyes are, because I've never been close enough to actually look. And I'm not a bear biologist, so I haven't studied this animal enough to be able to know what's happening within these shadows, at least for small areas. But I'm learning, and being in Alaska is probably the best place for me to learn this. So, oh, and here's the other thing I want to point out in this photograph. It's that backbone, and this applies to any animal with a backbone. So what we do know, I think most of us know about anatomy, is the backbone is attached to the skull, and we're one of the few animals that stand upright. So our backbone comes out of our skull at the base of it and shoots downwards. And I mean, it's essentially the same with any other animal, except they're positioned horizontally. So their skull is inside that massive tissue and muscle and fur. The backbone is attached behind it, and then it goes, follow the curve. So if you can imagine that the backbone is attached to the skull somewhere behind that skull there in this photograph. But if you follow a curved line that meets that first hump of the shoulders, and we know that the forelegs drape off of that, they're connected to that, and then follow it further back, continuing that curve. And bears don't have much of a tail that's visible to us, so we imagine that the backbone still goes to that area of the body. But if you can follow that backbone, it can really help understand the overall shape that an animal has. And I think that's very well shown in this particular photograph. And it can help place everything else about the animal. So you can place the forelegs under and on either side of that front hump, and then the back legs come off that hip area at the back. So keep that in your back pocket as just a nice little tip when you're drawing animals. It's not so helpful with birds because they're shaped very differently, with having their wings and their legs are literally up inside their body cavity. What we see of the bird's legs are actually their feet. So it's a little less helpful in that way, but these other animals, it can be very helpful to understand that backbone. So let's do a very quick one of this. And then if we still have time, I have some other photographs, but we can end it there after this one and do some questions and answers if that's.
I think it's probably a good idea.
Okay.
This is really fun. It's really neat for me to see your process.
Being right-handed, I guess it doesn't matter what your dominant hand is, but I'm often covering up part of my sketch so I can't even see it. So right now I'm working with some shadows because that's where my lines are kind of directing me to go. It's kind of neat to see how their forelimbs are positioned and how they relate to the rest of that body. I'm working a little bit with negative space here, trying to figure out where I want those feet in the back to go.
These little arcs of highlights around these different rounded forms are so useful, such a prominent part of this shape.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, now I'm going to go way back behind the head. And John knows, and I bet a lot of you guys, whoever's, folks who are attending have experienced too, that when they're moving around, I have to tweak some things here, but when they're moving around, you don't have much time. So you really have to have that, practice that skill of drawing really fast. And in this case, I'm going to overlap my other bear because I feel like my front paw here needs to be lowered. And that means this one needs to be lowered. And I end up with a whole bunch of lines, but all of this process is really helping my brain understand so much about the form. And I'm going to go back up in here and try to get a little bit of that snout going. A little bit of the eye in there. And a little bit more of that roundness that's going on inside. And this other ear. Now, in this case, we talked about the black bear's ears being more prominent than brown bears. But I mean, this one has some pretty big ears, but they are much rounder and they're shorter. All right. I think I could use a little more time with this one, but I'm going to pretend that this bear has moved on and the opportunity to finish it is gone. I guess, actually, I'm going to stop sharing this unless there's anything more you want to comment on, John, before I let this disappear.
But maybe this is just sort of a neat opportunity to look at this bear just in terms of lights and darks.
Yes.
And we saw earlier the reflection of those lights and darks in your sketches. And now we're seeing that when you're doing that, what you're really doing is you're responding to precisely the data that nature is giving you.
Yes.
So when you're drawing that way, you're drawing what you see rather than what you think should be.
Yep.
And that is very, very interesting to me.
Yeah. It seems to be, for me, it seems to be a fairly natural process. I'll do this with watercolor as well. I often don't draw before I use watercolor. I'll just go right into whatever sketch it is with the pigment itself. And it's just brush, pigment, water, and paper creating the shapes that I see. But it's very much the same process. It's quick. It's very gestural, and a little more complicated and scary and intimidating with watercolor to do that, but an excellent way to practice trying to capture things. Observation is always first. Observation. That's really what you're trying to master is understanding by seeing, but having this ability to and interest to capture some shapes on paper while you're observing is just doing it this way is just an excellent way to practice and get things in a quicker way. A little bit more there. All right. I'm going to stop this.
Oh, that was really cool.
It was. I'm going to show you one more photograph just to glance at. There's nothing that we're going to do with it except appreciate it.
Might make us want to go to Alaska and play with bears in you.
Well, isn't that neat? So this was that day on Katmai. And we were at a beach area. We were right along the coast. The planes actually landed on a rocky shore, which was kind of amazing. And taking off from this rocky shoreline was also a bit intimidating. But on our hike, this is what we came across these brown bear tracks, and they really show the way a bear walks.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And those little kind of claw marks out there. Now,
Yeah.
bears, by the way, bears that are feeding in places where the ground is soft have much longer claws than bears that are feeding up in rocky areas. So you also can get, by looking at tracks, you can get a sense of sort of the feeding preferred feeding habitat of an individual bear. Shows up what they like, where they like to feed shows up in the little footprints that they leave behind. Before you leave this slide and we go to some questions from the community here, I just wanted to take a moment and share a poem by Mary Oliver
Oh, lovely.
that bears on this. Um, she writes, "It's not my track, I say, seeing the ball of the foot and the wide heel and the naily, untrimmed toes." And I say again for emphasis, for to no one but myself, since no one is with me, this is not my track. And this is an extremely large foot. I wonder how large a body must be to make such a track. I'm beginning to make bad jokes. I have read probably 100 narratives where someone saw just what I am seeing. Various things happened next. Fairly long list. I won't go into it. But none of them told me what happened next. I mean, before whatever happens. How the distances light up. How the clouds are the most lovely shapes you have ever seen. How the wildflowers at your feet begin distilling a fragrance different and sweeter than any you have ever stood upon. How every leaf on the whole mountain is a flutter.
She's amazing. Yeah. Just amazing.
So, she's starting talking about just, you see the track or you see the bear, you are aware that you're in the presence of something where you are on the ground with something that is that demands a respect, and there's a fear with that, but there's you're also, as you're experiencing and expressing to us, you're able to also open yourself up perhaps with that fear, and that when we're kind of when I came out of having COVID, I walked around for a while, and for days the world just seemed brighter as I walked around and explored post sitting in an isolation room. And perhaps, or sometimes people have had an experience with death or a near-death experience or death of somebody who is near them, and that makes us much more aware of how precious our life is. I wonder if sort of these experiences with these large animals, where there also is, kind of puts you a little bit in touch with, on a primal level, with our mortality. Mm-hmm. Just how lucky we are to be alive, and how beautiful this experience of being on this planet is.
Well said. Yeah. I just want to say too, hearing you talk like that, I think maybe I hadn't really thought about this, but perhaps the anxiety that I do have around these animals, or even just thinking I could be around them, has to do with mortality, has to do with the idea that could be the end.
Yeah. And for us to live, the idea that we are someday going to die it's a scary idea, and so a lot of people do things to actively hide from it. But the idea that that also someday we're going to die is the motivation to find every brilliant moment of sunlight on grass, to smell the smells, to feel the wind while you can, to make the most out of being here.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And it makes me wonder if that's why, or a reason why, so many people love being in Alaska, love living here. There's so many things here that can end your life. And it's not just bears and moose. It's just the wilderness here. It's the climate. It's I mean, Alaska has, I think, 5 major, or maybe 4 major mountain ranges that contain something like 14 of the highest peaks in all of North America. And so there's a lot of territory out there where there's nothing else but you and that's that wide open space. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit. It makes me wonder because I couldn't figure that out, why people come here for a visit and don't leave. I think it might have something to do with that, is that you're living so close to the edge, and there's a certain kind of adrenaline and a certain kind of thinking that this is the edge I want to live on. This is what makes me feel alive.
Or even if you are not in a situation where you are under threat, being aware of just how precious this moment of life is. And to not take it for granted. To make the most out of that. There's this pulls me into another poem, so maybe I'll share that too. This is by Steve Coit, and it's called Notice. And here he's not talking about I'm not talking about a bear, but talking about realizing the beauty of the thread that we're balanced on. He says, "This evening, the sturdy Levi's I wore every day for over a year, and which seemed to the end in perfect conditions, suddenly tore. How or why, I don't know, but there it was, a big rip in the crotch. A month ago, my friend Nick walked off the racquetball court, showered, got into his street clothes, and halfway home collapsed and died. Take heed, you who read this, and drop to your knees now and again, like the poet Christopher Smart, and kiss the earth, and be joyful, and make much of your time, and be kindly to everyone, even those who do not deserve it. For although you do not believe it will happen, you too will someday be gone. I, whose Levi is ripped at the crotch for no reason, assure you that such is the case. Pass it on."
That's a good one. Definitely.
Yeah. So then we're not talking about even like the bear. It's you know, your ripped Levi's are a bell of mindfulness about being in the presence of the beauty around us.
Yeah.
And so then when you do go to someplace like Alaska and you have that, I think you're even more able to be present in that experience.
I would say so. I can, speaking of the word mindfulness, I can have those moments, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, where just sitting along a roadside and admiring with your sketchbook and your brain, the way a blade of grass, a seed head, is just kind of moving with the wind, and trying to understand, I wish my body could move like that. I wonder what that feels like to do that. It's even just simple moments like that that make me feel that moment of gratitude for being alive to see this and feel this and wonder about it. And that to me makes a wonderful day, and a wonderful way to appreciate all the nature that's around us, and how we can engage with it.
I would like to bring some other folks in on this conversation. If there's anyone that feels that they'd like to share, so maybe at this point, let's take down the screen share.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear people's thoughts about, if you want to join a conversation about mindfulness, presence, bears, and Avea, I'd love to hear a few thoughts about the poem that you haven't written yet.
Sorry. So when we were talking about the footprints and the fear inherent in the bears, whenever I hear bears now, I always think about the story of Timothy Treadwell, so I can relate to that fear. And so I thought at first of the footprints being memento mori, but then also I wondered, why is there no saying for remember to live? So pretty soon I'm going to try to write a poem called Memento Vivere.
Oh.
Because it can be both. You can look at those footprints and see a reminder of death, and you can also, like Jack was saying, use that as a reminder to live, or a reminder of life.
Which strangely is also the function of the memento mori, right? That it is that reminder of death to motivate you to live in the moment. Oh, I'm really excited about that poem.
Thank you. And memento mori, that's how you say it? Okay, I always say it wrong.
I may say it wrong. Unfortunately, my dad is no longer here to ask about it. Otherwise, we could get him on from here, and he would let us know.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for taking us with you to Alaska, and for letting us know how to stay safe around bears by being in large groups.
Yes.
That's just a great, it's a great tip for any nature that you're going to go into that's a bit more wild. Don't go alone.
Yeah.
Go with build community, or you'll get eaten by bears.
Yeah.
So that's oh, what fun.
You did add color. Wonderful.
I wanted to. The shadows were just making me happy. So
yes. And punching those in Ray Bonto style, not being Ray Bonto, you've inspired all of us to push our values, right? And I also left you a little kind of note to remind you about the memento vivere.
Yeah.
Could you see that one more time?
Sure thing.
Right.
Better.
And then down a little bit, and just the shapes of lights and darks. And then you notice that our brains fill in the rest, all the blanks.
Yes.
Our brains fill in the blanks. You don't have to say to the viewer, here's all the answers, right? Give them a little bit, and they say like, oh, that connects here, and then there's a head, and then there must be eyes here. I can feel the eyes in that sketch, even though you didn't draw the eyes in that sketch.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's really, it's so important. You don't always have to think about that as an artist or as you're sketching, but it is another element to viewing it, is getting just the right lines or just the right shapes in place, relating to each other enough so that the things that are missing, the viewer's brain can fill in that space.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so it's not just what you leave in, it's what did you leave out.
Right. Yep. A whole nother skill.
Yeah.
It is.
Let's join Kate Chandler in on this conversation. Kate, thank you so much for being with us. And you may now unmute. Hey there.
Hello. Sorry, I've been a little distracted. I've been planning my cat's birthday party.
Excellent.
Anyways, it's on the 11th. If anyone's in Bellingham, please join us. We haven't decided the time or location yet, but anyways, I just wanted to note that recently someone was attacked by a black bear in Bellingham. We believe they provoked it because I know of this guy, and he actually managed to get into a fight with one lady from our barn. Like, this guy seems like he. Anyways, so unfortunately, it was a mother black bear that had to be put down, and presumably the young cubs are dead too. But it's just really sad when people don't interact with nature well, and things like that happen. Especially because, like, I'd really love to have some experience with bears, and I feel like there's ways to do that where, you know, even with mother bears, you just back away. I sound like this guy was really pushing his luck, and yeah.
All it takes is just a few looks at what people put on YouTube of the kind of bear encounters that they created. Any of those are things that could have easily gone south. And then the wildlife managers are put in a situation where I have to go kill this bear. Right. So that person, by their reckless behavior, created a situation that somebody else had to go out and kill a bear that didn't need to die, a mama bear that didn't need to die. I'm 100% with you on that. We have a responsibility to behave appropriately around wildlife. That also includes, not feeding it. A lot of these animals are ones that, in Yosemite, problem bears are bears that people have fed.
Yeah, and you see that I saw like all over the South where there are alligators, there are signs that say a fed gator is a dead gator.
Yeah.
Just like anytime
they associate you with Chunk's chicken, they're going to come to your chicken chunks. And that's not good. But that people sometimes feel like their connection with nature is, oh, look, I'm feeding the bears. They're my friends. Right?
Yeah.
You've just signed that bear's death warrant.
I know. It's funny because like there are ways to interact with nature. I probably wouldn't try it with bears unless I was somewhere where it was like a safe distance where like you were up on something where you could make noise. I don't know. Probably not. But like I had a really cool interaction with Raven while I was up in British Columbia where it was copying car alarm sounds and I was whistling them back to them. And then we kept like talking back and forth for about 20 minutes. It was really funny. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a thing of education and sort of this misconception, like you see it with not only wild animals, but I see it with horses a lot, where people have this idea of what animals are like that are either anthropomorphized or they're taken from some sort of film or media, that they expect the animal to behave a certain way and have like this imagined idea of what will happen that does not line up with the realistic expectations. Like animals are animals, they will follow, what makes sense for that animal to do. They've got completely different instincts and impulses than us. Yeah,
there's this interesting, it's a word we don't have in English, but it's a very useful term. It means the world as experienced through the sense organs and neural networks of a different organism. And that I cannot expect a grizzly bear to have it has its own internal processes, and I have no idea what those are because I'm not a grizzly bear. And so the term is the Umwelt. So we are in our own Umwelt, and that's this world as perceived by humans. And then it's also interesting, each individual human, because of our experiences and our expectations, we can look at the same event and see very, very different things. But then you add in a whole different neural network and Um, and the so then people say that, because their brains are different, then animals don't have feelings, animals don't have thoughts. Well, I would say they don't have feelings and thoughts that are like human feelings and thoughts. There's like a bear thing going on inside the bear, and there's a honeybee thing going on inside the honeybee, and those are different than what is going on in a human being, but not necessarily better or worse. So
yeah, definitely.
Right.
Last week.
Yes.
Like last week, I got trampled by a horse and got stepped on a few times, and people were going, "Oh, horse was bad. Horse did something dangerous. Dangerous horse." I'm going, "It's not a dangerous horse. The horse was standing next to me. It's a baby horse, so he doesn't know where to put his feet. I mean, big baby." And something spooked him. And in a prey animal, his biggest defense is to run, and that's exactly what he did. I just wish he hadn't run over the top of me, but
yes, you're okay.
Yeah, not the brightest animal, if I'm being honest, but they do what's natural to them. It's not a bad thing. I mean, they don't. Yeah. I think they just need.
Yeah, that's right. We want to know, is that is
yes,
Hank?
So that is where that comes from.
The damn it, Hank. Yeah. And that's also something that kind of irritates me about people who will
you're just gonna pick him up and take him back?
Pretend to have they pretend to have, say, a
are you just picking him up and taking him here? So the car will be here?
A psychic link with a with an animal, and I just had a conversation with this leopard. No, you felt you did, and those are your human your human experiences. But a leopard has a leopard thing going on inside a leopard, and that is really independent of the fact that there's zero evidence that telepathy can happen even between human beings. There are, like, a leopard is it's over there being a leopard, and its internal dialogue is going to be different than anything that a human could possibly imagine. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but
communicating. Communicating. Sorry for the interruption. I'll hop off now.
Yeah. Excellent. So Shannon, love to bring you in on the conversation. Oh wait, hold on. We try again. We have to unmute.
Did I unmute yet?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay. Well, no horror stories, thankfully, except that I also have an internal fear, respect for bears. It's the one thing, if I'm out and about, which I actually have had lots of out and about experiences, but when I hear of a bear in the neighborhood, I get in the car and lock it up. So, but I have worked with drawing and painting bears. So I'm going to shift away from horror stories to a couple of examples of some experiments that I've made over the years. This one was a practice watercolor using the, what's her name? The style or some pointers from another very famous wildlife watercolor painter. I can't think of her name right now, and her book isn't sitting right out on my shelf as it usually is, because I have great respect for her work. So this was just like I say, just an experiment with watercolor using a bear for the subject.
I love that mix of like those warms and those purples.
Yeah.
This is a great example of why it'd be so tempting to, like, it's a black bear, I'm going to get out my black paint. You're painting the black bear without a lick of black in it, and there I'm seeing ochres and browns and reds and purples and blues and greens all sort of dancing within this bear, and it's just so lively. I love those. Were these applied wet and wet, or did you let one layer dry and then put the next layer on top?
I think, as I recall, this was done a few years ago, but as I recall, I was letting things dry in between.
Okay. Yeah.
Because otherwise, of course, it can just all turn to mud. And the experiment really was all about trying to get the nuances of the vibrancy of an animal that's beyond just, a photograph. So that was the purpose of the experiment, was to try the use of various layers or what you would even call glazes of color, to achieve the final product.
That's really fun. That's really
very
cool.
well done.
Thank you. And then also with another art class, actually, this was my very first attempt at oil. And the theme was, bear skull.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of lights and darks being worked on that. That's great.
Yeah. So it was a very fun, thing, getting involved with oil paint. And so, of course, I couldn't stop with just one. So I did it a few times with slightly different effects.
Wow.
Oh, yes. They're like nachos. You can't stop with just one.
Yeah. So.
This is so much fun. And also, folks, notice that the value range in these sketches here, that Shannon is letting these sort of the dark point go all the way dark on these. And that just gives you so much, they've got atmosphere and mood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So, it's a very basic beginner's study in oil paint.
The more that you do that, the more you're refining the critical things. Getting your values to work in your painting is so much more important than anything that happens with colors.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to master, I feel, at least for me it is.
Mm-hmm.
I work at it a lot, but as I said, just moving on from horror stories, but and sharing some work that I've done over the last few years, and with bear as the theme.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that you shared those. That's great. Thank you.
That's really fun. That is really fun. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
oh, there we go.
So let's join. We have Cheryl, Susan, and Ray Bonto, who we can join into the conversation. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here. You may now unmute.
Great, thank you. Oh my gosh, what a lovely, lovely session, Sandy. Wow, I'm just gobsmacked, I guess, about bears and you're being so close. Just incredible. I just wanted to pipe in a little bit about one thing that I was thinking of, especially too with the poems. Thank you so much for that, John. It made me think of the term gravitas, which, the weightiness of the poems. And we were talking about mindfulness and being aware of our life and the preciousness of it. And then, of course, the bears with gravity brought me back to the drawing. I'll just share a little bit. Thank you so much for that. I don't know, is that showing? I'm not.
Yeah, it is.
I guess. So what I was thinking about a bit when I was playing with the contour, going back to some of those exercises, reminding me of art school stuff, was with the weightiness of those bears and about using another tool, because I had an flowing ink pen happening. So it was the contour quickly when I was just kind of connecting with the weight, the feeling. That's that would be a great mindfulness thing. Just when you're sitting, you feel your own weight. If you're looking at something that has so much weight, it can help, forgive the pun, but just the groundedness, of yourself in the environment, relaxing so that you can, just connect with that feeling of what you're looking at, or whether it's a bird, something very light, but just the mass of line and the weight of line can help, I think, with the description of a shape that's got such a huge weight to it. That's a tool that sort of sprang to my mind, trying to capture the heaviness. And you can use contour line, thinking of it internally, almost like a different exercise for a moment, a gesture, drawing of the shape where you're just literally starting with lines scribbling inside where you're feeling the most weight. And then you might not even have any line up above where the top of the spine is, the sun's hitting the very top, but mainly it might be really dark in all those feet and legs that are bearing the weight. Just a separate tool, another tool. Thank you so much.
This is really useful, that idea about sort of showing that weight and that mass with a different tool. If all you have is a fine point pen, that will sort of dictate the way that you render it. But I love that. Also, if you're thinking about the gravitas and the gravity, beautiful.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you articulated that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Cheryl. Let's also bring in Susan. Hey there. Great to have you with us.
Thanks. This was almost unbearably fun.
Oh.
This was really good. Yeah, I love this. I was having a lot of fun with these lights and shadows and things.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to get the black bear and grizzly at the beginning, but only had time for one. But I can rewatch it and get the other ones.
But that little foot of the bear kind of stepping out, that thin wrist there, is very bare. I
didn't realize their feet are so like weirdly flat. Like, are they doing like a plantigrade thing where they're on their whole?
Yes, and the front foot will often be in a digitigrade pose, and sometimes comes down to a plantigrade position.
Kind of like
the back foot is all plantigrade.
I'm gonna have to watch some bears, but I'll have to find some first. There was
sometimes you get the front foot plantigrade. There'll be a little extra circle back there, but it's usually doing digital.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'll have to scrutinize them some more, because I definitely, like, I'm looking at it, I would have drawn it like you're saying about don't draw what you know, draw what you're actually seeing, because I would have looked at my cat's feet a lot, and I would have drawn it with this sort of the thickness of a cat's foot, relatively speaking. But even if it is digitigrade, can I pronounce it right? There's still a lot flatter. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, these lights and shadows were really excellent.
Those were wonderful.
And look at this.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I was trying to get that sort of like, I can't quite figure where the light's actually coming from in this picture, because it's like this side was more lit, but then this side of the face
that
was
side
lit,
too.
so
Yeah.
I think the lights from like mostly above were just a weird orientation or something.
Right.
But
those arcs of light in the fuzz across the shoulders, across the booty, that just carves those forms.
Yeah, that was fun. My problem, you're saying about having to trying to do it fast, and my problem is I probably took at least as long doing this as I would have for if I were just making the lines and things. So I gotta keep practicing, because I want to be able to get those critters fast. I was in relation to this whole discussion of like having these interactions with these animals, and I was just thinking about like the idea that the most important thing, if you care about these animals, the most important thing is that what you're doing, that you're prioritizing like their welfare. And sometimes that means like denying yourself the chance to have this exciting interaction that you want.
Exactly.
And I was thinking this, so my parents live out in a very rural area of Colorado, and they get deer coming through in the winter especially, and they I think they were originally actually putting out some like food for the deer, and then they learned that they're not supposed to do that, but they do put out a salt lick, or like a mineral block or whatever, which you are allowed to put out, and water and stuff for them. But they used to get some like the horse cookies that I guess deer can also eat, and put them out, and the deer would all congregate in the winter because they were really hungry. And I remember that one of the first winters that I came out to visit them there, because they moved there after I was in college. But you know, I was like, went out to go toss the deer, and the deer were so hungry. They were right there. They didn't want to get close to me, but if I tossed one a short distance from me, they would actually get that close.
Yeah.
And if I held one out in my hand, they weren't quite ready to like take it from my hand, but they were tempted. And I was like really excited at how close these deer were getting to me. And then I sort of thought about it later and also, you know, had some advice from this later and realized like, no, this is actually, even though I want to have this cool experience where I get to be really close to these deer, it really isn't good for them, because now they're learning that this is a place they can get food. And then what happens when they can't get the food there, or they're bigger than me and they're still wild animals. And if they do something to hurt me by accident because they spooked, that may still result in like, you know, the Fish and Wildlife people or whatever coming and like killing one of those deer. And so it's not fair to the deer for me to try and have that cool interaction if that might actually present a problem for the deer. And also if it makes the deer more comfortable around humans, then they may end up suffering as a result of that. So yeah. So my parents have stopped putting out the cookies for them. They do put out water. They do put out like a mineral block, which are things that you're allowed to do according to whatever the regulations, but they don't put out any more food for them in the winter. And they still get plenty of deer coming through, and they've got good binoculars and we can watch them. But in the end, I think, like, you know, whether it's bears or deer or whatever, like if you care about these animals, caring about them doesn't mean you want to get up close and snuggle them. Caring about them means that you do whatever you can do or not do whatever you can do to, you know, to make sure that they are in the best position. And even if that means that you don't get to have a cool interaction. Oh well.
Yeah. And a good rule of thumb for this is that if your behavior changes the behavior of the animal that you're observing, you're too close.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, your Sandy's example of kind of what the team was doing there, watching the bear's coming this way. So we're gonna, you know, you were responding to what it was doing to kind of, so that you're staying outside of the bubble of disturbance. You could come up, and the guides knew if we stop here, it's gonna still go about its bear things.
Yeah.
Instead of having, if it changes, so you know what I will often do is there's a group of geese out there, and you want to kind of look at the group of geese. How close should you get? Well, the minute that they start kind of popping more heads up and going, then I want to back up again, because that's them starting to go. They're starting to kind of. You then want to watch their behavior enough so that when their alert behavior starts to appear, you notice it and respond to it. So I absolutely agree with you, Susan.
Well, and sometimes, you know, if those animals get used to being around humans to the point where they are not afraid of them and are not afraid of humans being near, that can end up badly for the animal too.
Mm-hmm.
Talking of geese, there's a pond that I go to sometimes that has some, you know, things, and there were occasionally families of geese. And this spring there were several families of geese around, and there's some nice benches you can sit on, and the geese are just kind of hanging out, and they're kind of ignoring the humans, and that's great. So I'd gone there a few times, and I'd seen them when they have their babies. They're going to be kind of teenagers. At this point, they're probably, you know, gone. But then at some point I went out there, had some lunch with me, and one of the geese comes right, and it literally came right over to me at the bench, demanding my lunch. And this obviously wasn't the first time, because he was very confident. I didn't even couldn't even think what was happening until he was so close to me that I couldn't even like get up and move. And he actually tried to nip me in the belly when I was holding my lunch away from him, wouldn't let him have it. And I'm like, well, if I just let him have it, maybe he'll do it. But I also like, he's already been habituated.
And then it's going to trigger for the next one.
Can get lunch, and now this is the result: is that he's now actually like not afraid of humans and is hurting humans, which means he might get killed by the animal control at some point.
You've trained it that in order to get food from people, you nip the people.
Right. So what I ended up doing, I said no very firmly, and he didn't mind that at all. So then I remember, and I saw that they, I watched them doing their thing at each other before. So I went and did that. Went, and
You hissed at the goose?
That's
I
great.
hissed at him, and he backed off and sort of started just very nonchalantly, as if nothing happened.
Well, if you're going to be that way about it.
Yeah. So at that point, once I was out, then I went back to my car, ate my lunch, and went back.
And also, what's cool about that is you've watched their behavior enough that you can
Exactly.
goose.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, though. It's like, so I'm genuinely worried. Like, apparently, people have probably been either feeding these geese or have been leaving food around.
Yeah, because people think it's so nice. I'm gonna. Oh, look, they came close to me.
So, like, what's going to happen if somebody comes with their toddler, and this goose now tries to hurt the toddler, and then
toddler has a sandwich.
It might get shot because of, that's so. I don't know. It's just
no. I'm with you. Yeah. Let goose go be goose. You get your goose thing on, and that's right. I'll do me. You do goose.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Well, anyway, so now I've learned, like geese have always been something I'll always, give a lot of respect to and stay away from. And they're not nearly as big as bears. So I think if it comes to bears, I'll definitely
more manageable.
Respect them from a very great distance.
So yeah, a bear is like a goose with big teeth and claws and fur.
Same attitude. Yeah, can be. Can I share? I want to take a moment, this conversation, this piece of it. A book I read, some of you may have read this, you might be familiar with Fox and I. This backwards thing always gets me. This I recently read this book. It's about one woman's experience and internal struggle with befriending a wild animal. And it wasn't an intentional, relationship. It's just a circumstantial one that came up, and she kind of followed the line with it. But it's a really interesting read as she describes her background. She's a wildlife biologist, she's a professor and a writer, and just this internal struggle she writes about on whether or not it's appropriate. And I'm not going to say too much more about it, but it's well written, and it's just a really good story narrative of somebody else's experience with that. I think she's in rural Montana. It's a great read.
Thank you for the recommendation about that. Susan, thank you for those stories.
Yeah.
In just a moment, we're going to be joining Ray Bonto and then Matthew. Before we do, Sandy, if people want to follow you and keep track of your adventures or find out about workshops that you are doing, how should they go about doing that?
So there's a few things. You can join my private email list to get a newsletter each month, where I provide a sketch from my journal, some experience that I've had in that particular month. The thing about that is the artwork that you'll see in my newsletter is only for my newsletter subscribers. I don't show it on social media. This particular event is an exception with the brown bears. That was in my July newsletter. But otherwise, you'll see artwork that you won't see anywhere else from me. And it's a great way to learn about what's coming up, what I've done, how to connect with me, and what my Alaska adventures are like. And this project that I'm doing, it is a project. The sketchbook work that I'm doing and my whole experience here in Alaska is something I intend to put into book form. And that's a work in progress. I don't have a publisher yet. I just started this project in January, so I'm not even a year into it. But that is the outcome that I'm going to be pursuing, is a book about my Alaska experiences. And the working title to that is A New England Artist Exploring Alaska. The other thing that might interest folks, and you can contact me directly, we can give you my email address, is I developed a year-long course in field sketching, and that's called Field Sketching, a Year of Mindfulness, where we meet every other week throughout the seasons. We have breaks in between for personal journaling time, turn your attention away from what we're learning and do something else, whatever you need to do in that break time. But it is a full year of learning observation skills, learning some basic drawing skills that can help your sketches, and learning about the natural world around where you live. I have 2 classes left for this first year. It went by fast. So I've already done this for 1 full year. It was a wonderful, gratifying experience, and I'm going to run it again. But in order to get information about that, you need to get onto my priority list, which is different from my private email list.
Okay.
And then that's a trigger for me to start sending you information about it. That is going to start November 3rd. So I'm still 2 months away, but it's an incredible experience. Not for everybody, because it is a full year commitment, and it's a full year commitment for me as well. But in the right circumstance, it might be for you this year. It might be just what you need to make a sustainable practice of this nature journaling for yourself, which is all. It's a tough thing for most of us to make sure we put time into journaling on a regular basis so that we are connecting with nature in a regular basis. And I understand that well, but
for me, being a part of a class, being a part of a group is the motivation that they need to kind of get them to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They know we're going to be showing up next week, and I've got some accountability to that.
Right.
So, there's a lot of research on skill development that shows that having a coach really helps you be able to do deliberate practice, to take whatever skill you're trying to develop and bring yourself to the next level. That sounds like a really good club. Could we also in the chat here, and then we also will want to put that into the recording of this. Let's make sure we have the links of how people can sign up for your priority list and your mailing.
Okay. All right. I'll type those in now. And while I'm typing that, I'll just add, because a lot of you don't know me. John has known me for a little while. We've known each other just for a little bit. But I'm guessing most of you have never heard of me before. I've been an illustrator for over 30 years. I've been teaching for over 25 years. It's only in the last couple of years that I've turned to the digital platform because of COVID, and so many of folks have had to do the same thing. So with that long experience, I've been able to develop a teaching style that resonates really well with a lot of folks, which is creating a safe environment for you to learn and share. And what I mean by safe is non-judgmental. And I know this community is exactly that, non-judgmental, very encouraging of everybody, which is awesome. But you'll find that in this group as well, in my teaching style. I always teach and train others to look at their own work with a positive eye first. It's always a good thing to be critical so that you can keep learning, but flipping that and looking at the positive stuff first instead of always looking at what went wrong first is another piece to my teaching style. And so it's just a great, warm, very encouraging kind of environment to get yourself involved in. So I'm putting in the chat is my email address, and then sandymcdermott.com is my website. McDermott.
And people can find your mailing list there as well as the priority list?
Yeah. So, oh, actually, one more thing I will add to that. To get on the newsletter, the private email list, it's hard for me to talk and type.
I'm on there. I look forward to your emails. You don't send me a lot of like spammy stuff, but when you've got stuff, I'm like, oh, fun. This is let's see what's up in your sketchbook. Yeah.
Oh, I'll put my Instagram handle in there too. Yeah, so it's a once a month email with the newsletter. Occasionally there might be an extra email I send out. I didn't have enough time to do it for this, but if there's a really cool event that's happening, I might send out one additional email. So yeah, it's not spammy. I hate that stuff as well. All right, that's my Instagram. There we go. So yeah, it's minimal emails, that once a month newsletter, not a lot of spam, and that's important to me as well. So those are ways that you can connect with me. If the course interests you, as I said, we still have 2 months to go, but I'm putting this out. I will soon be putting out the registration, opening registration to the entire world, probably next week. So those seats are hopefully going to go pretty fast. Yeah.
Thank you.
Small groups, yeah.
I'd like to bring Ray Bonto in at this point. Ray Bonto, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you.
And tell us your thoughts, questions, or ideas.
Yeah, first of all, I think I've seen, I know Sandy from Marley Piper's Sunday shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Ray.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
Wow.
close these, remove the spotlight and this spotlight, so we'll make that a little bit bigger on the screen. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I knew you'd be hitting those values.
Yeah. Oh, and even a little bit of anatomical kind of work.
No, that's just a dog from before.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's lovely. That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yep. Just so looking at letting the shapes be the shapes, and then those shapes carve those forms.
Mm-hmm.
That snout blending into the leg be just so tempting to draw in what we don't know, but you let yourself stop, and that also gives you a real. Is this this is soft pencil?
No, it's common HB.
Oh, HB. Okay.
Well, that's really fun. So nice,
Yeah,
nice strong values.
Yeah.
And could you hold it up so we can see the one in the bottom left-hand side? The bear that's walking towards us.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little bit of glare on the screen, and there we go. Oh yeah, a strong, wide stance there.
Wow, you really captured the essence, and even a little more than the essence of bear there. That's great.
Really strong, really strong. Your sketch catches the power of that animal. You're sketching, a little bit earlier, someone was talking about how, would you use a different tool and it'll kind of give you a weight, a heaviness to it. Your sketching style, it feels, for the way you handle those, it was with sort of powerful lines and marks and weighted shadow areas, and that really kind of feels bare to me. I like that.
Yep.
Okay. What's a brown bear when it comes out of the rain?
A brown bear when it comes out of the rain. Brown bear when it comes out of the rain. Brown bear when it comes out of the rain. Sandy, have you figured this one out?
Total blank. Nope.
No, tell us.
A drizzly bear.
A grizzly bear! Oh!
Good one.
Nice. Is there more where that came from?
Huh?
Is there more where that came from?
No.
No?
Yeah.
All right.
There's one in the chat, like.
Oh, I didn't see that. Can you drop that like it's hot?
Okay. As no one who saw it types it in the chat.
Okay, yeah. If you've already seen this, all right.
Okay. What's a polar bear's favorite healthy snack?
His favorite what snack?
Healthy snack.
Oh, healthy snack.
Healthy snack.
No.
It's not ice cream. That's not very healthy.
No. I was thinking snow cone, but that's not healthy either.
Yeah, ice cream. Yeah, I'm gonna go for ice cream and snow cones.
No, iceberg lettuce and snow peas.
We love it. We love it.
You need your own show.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very good. Yeah. So let's join Matthew. Matthew, thank you for waiting and thank you for being with us. You can now unmute.
Thank you for having me. I just want to point out, I believe Holly also had her hand up for a while. So
Oh, thank you for
go to Holly first.
Oh, sure. Or actually, since you're here, we'll do that. Then we'll jump over to Holly. But also, I want to give you mad respect for looking out for other people in the queue and taking care of other people in the community. So because I might lose you or have a hard time finding her, let's jump to you now. But thank you so much for looking out for Holly. Yes. Oh, there we go.
I remuted myself. Thank you. And so I just wanted to share some sketches here. I was focusing on, the gesture, the contour, and what else did I write? The shadow shapes. I'm trying to get those shadows.
Oh, yes.
Very nice.
Oh, I really like this approach. So folks, notice what Matthew's doing here. So this is really interesting. He's choosing a line to be the terminator between the light and the shadow, dropping that in, and look, because he's carefully observed where that is and the nuances in it. And drawing in that line, by the way, is more challenging than you might think, because he's making a choice in that gradation zone where to have that turn on and off. And look at how that also sculpts that form. You can see the shoulders of the bear, the hips of the bear, the roundness of the belly.
Yeah, I was trying to simplify it a little bit. I really like the parts where there's like just a bubble of a little shadow above that terminator line, and like the little parts that cut into it. I'm trying to get that line as best I could. And because I was seeing them much as more shapes, and a lot of the line work I have going in some directions, so it kind of looks furry and stuff like that. But mainly, I was just trying to get the shadows.
That's cool. And something that is neat about this also is that this forces you to you cannot kind of have an idea in your head of how the bear should look. You have to believe the bear.
Especially for the top one, that the second drawing that we did, that huge shape where the legs are coming together and there's the head and the leg. I wanted to draw the face so badly.
That's right. I was in the same boat. I was like, I gotta draw that face, but nope, there's no face on that bear. But you do it like that, and then you get this sort of feeling of like that bear's got its stretch on, and you can feel like the motion of this bear coming along there. That's cool. That's really fun. Thank you for sharing that.
I want a quick comment. I love that your mark making was very different than my own. And as I pointed out, you can use different kinds of marks to achieve the same end goal, but they can look different, and that goes to style and what someone's comfortable with. We all build up a repertoire or a file cabinet of different kinds of marks that we like to use, and I really appreciate that yours are different. I kind of struggle personally with doing hatch lines. I don't ever feel like that's quite right for me, but I love to see it.
Yeah, I don't do it often. Mainly it's scribbling and going like this to make my shadows. A lot more when you see it in one of the bottom ones.
Yes, and I love on that bottom one with the face, how you have your marks going in the direction that the fur would be going, which does add to the volume of it. But you handled the hatch lines very nicely.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your experiences. I don't get to see bears ever, so this was really cool.
Where are you living? Where are you from?
Michigan. So they're around but I just don't get out there. So I go to a particular trail. We go on the non-bear side.
Yeah.
Someday I would like to go on the bear side. It's a hike, tougher hike, but
Okay.
it'll be cool. But
Yeah.
the whole danger thing, bears, just stay away from predators, kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, bring a couple of folks with you if you decide to go on the bear side.
Bring a team.
Yes. Thank you for the advice.
Thank you so much for being with us, and also thank you so much for looking out for Holly too.
Yeah.
So Holly, welcome to the group here, and you can now unmute, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, how can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I really enjoyed today's study, and as always, it's just so nice to be with a group of learners who are kind and was very kind. I think his name was Matthew, was on before. Like, yeah, that was really sweet. But anyway,
he's got your back. Matthew's got your back.
That was really nice. What it's funny, everybody hears like kind of what they need to hear in the lesson. And what I heard Sandy say was, you know, it's okay just to pull out your watercolor and just splash around, you know, like just try that. And I thought, really? So that was kind of like, you know, that was helpful. Then the other thing was like to sketch in ink, because for years and years, I only drew in ink, only microns. And then I thought, wow, I should like do, but I'm so tentative when I go to anything that ink that it kind of handicaps me. So I tried to do this, like I used my, so I started in pencil, kind of. This was, I don't know whether you can see this or not. But
Yes.
So it looks. So the first one looks like a pig, and the next one looks like a, I don't know, something. And then I had the one on the bottom. I actually thought the other side was where the head was, and then when I knew that this was where the head was, I felt compelled to put the head in, you know, even though you couldn't see it. So that was kind of funny. That was really funny. And then I started, you know, after we drew the bears, I thought about my first and practically only stuffed animal was a bear, and how much I loved him. So it's kind of funny, like, you know, I sketched these bears from the life, and then all of a sudden I just went to like, oh man, yeah, he was my bud, you know.
That's awesome. That's so it's so great that triggered a memory, and that you went in, you just carried on and fluidly put in a piece of that memory on the same page. That's really fabulous.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, wherever our brains go with this, as Avea pointed out, these what we call these it reminds me of, and you know, if you're thinking about bears and that brings you back to that bear of your childhood. What's the last time you thought about that? What is your bear's name?
Bear.
That's a solid name.
The younger the child, the closer the name will be to the one
object.
Yeah, it will be bear is very young, so that's 2, 3. You know,
yeah.
So I have.
Unless they name it before they can really form words.
Oh, that's true.
While you're reaching for this next thing, I'm going to run into the next room, and I'm going to find for you Muff.
Okay.
I'll be back in a minute, but please continue, and I'll be back with Muff in just a second.
Yeah. I don't have too much else to share. So I was gonna like I just turned 68, and I got this bear when I was 2. I
was going to ask if you still have it. Oh my gosh.
I do. And he's so loved, you know. He looks so worried because he, you know, he's been through a lot. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really funny. I think they made stuffed animals out of like straw or something. So he feels not like a modern stuffed animal, but more like a piece of straw.
Yeah. I'm sure it was still a wonderfully comforting thing for you, though, growing up.
Absolutely. I had somebody, when I was a little kid, somebody asked me, like, if the house was on fire and you had to run out, who would you take with you? And I just would say bear. I would take bear with me.
What else? What else are you going to bring? That's your partner, or at least it was. For a long time.
And I wanted to say that I spent 2 weeks on a mission boat in Alaska in 1972. And that was before there were any cruise ships or anything like that. It was so pristine, and it was just beautiful. And I remember going out on these hikes with men would have guns, and I would be like, oh my gosh, it's dangerous. Yeah, I know what that feels like. It was exciting and scary.
Yeah, so that was something upon moving here. That was one of the many things that really changed my perspective on even just hiking, because most people will hike with guns here. Sometimes it's to hunt, but often it's just for bear encounters or moose encounters. And seeing that almost every time we go out to hike it's still a little unsettling.
The brain just goes.
As I said, growing up I actually grew up in Massachusetts, but most of my last several decades have been in New Hampshire and the mountains there. And as I said, we have moose and bear, but it's really, really rare that you're going to see somebody carrying a gun. And here it's pretty common. Just something, it's just a different rule to live by. That it's just something else to get used to. That's all.
Right. The concept of good and plenty, it's good and scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holly, thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Did you find muff?
Well, actually, I could not find flower muff, but I found gray muff.
Oh my God.
Been restitched together. Flower muff is in even less recognizable shape, but this this one, you can see the many kind of mending jobs that happened throughout time there. So yeah, sometimes we grow up with bears, and sometimes we regularly keep our bear team by our side here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Sandy, I am so grateful for your coming on and sharing your wisdom and insights and experience, and teaching with this community. Want to encourage people to follow Sandy's work and adventures, and if you would like her to help you with coaching you through perhaps your next stages of whatever you want to do with your nature journaling. It's wonderful that we're having this discussion at the time right before you launch a new program.
Yeah, I know the timing is great. Yeah. So as I said, there's still time to at least get information about it. But that time's going to go by quick. So don't wait too long to get in touch with me.
So thank you again. And we'll be following your experiences, and look for Sandy around Marley's show, as well as on the Nature Journal Club. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, John. Again, it's humbling for me to be a part of your Thursday morning workshop and being introduced to your community in this way. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody who shared today, as well as the bears themselves. Mary Oliver, send a shout out to you. Steve Coit, and our amazing co-host, Avea. I'm going to bring you back on here. Spotlight, there we are. Avea, thank you so much for helping us rock these workshops and conversations. It's really great to see all of you. Until we meet again, let's keep in mind that we share this planet with the bear, and let that be an insight to that, like Mary Oliver, it sort of just helps us find the beauty in that moment. We're surrounded by wonder all the time. And hey, maybe if you go for a walk in the woods, maybe you won't see a bear, but maybe a bear will see you. And that's
absolutely true. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for coming in and joining this.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avia.